The call came while I was under a Honda Civic replacing a catalytic converter. My phone rang, and I saw the number on my screen, Precision Motors, the Lexus dealership where I had dropped off my car that morning for a routine oil change. I wiped the grease off my hands and answered.
Ms. Foster. A man's voice, professional, serious. This is Mike from Precision Motors. I'm calling about your 2022 Lexus RX.
Yeah, what's up? Is the oil change done? Well, we completed the oil change, but during our complimentary multi-point inspection, we discovered some serious issues with your vehicle that need immediate attention. I felt a prickle of suspicion. My car ran perfectly. No warning lights, no unusual noises, no performance issues. I had driven it to the dealership that very morning without a single problem. What kind of issues? I asked. Mike's tone shifted to concern mixed with urgency. Your transmission is showing early signs of failure, the fluid is contaminated, and the internal components are wearing prematurely. If this isn't addressed soon, you're looking at a complete transmission replacement, which would cost significantly more. I frowned. My transmission shifted smoothly. No slipping, no delay, no jerking. What else? I asked. Your brake pads are critically worn down to about 15% remaining. You're very close to metal-on-metal contact, which would damage the rotors and create a dangerous braking situation. We strongly recommend replacing all 4 sets of pads and resurfacing the rotors. I had checked my brakes myself 2 months ago. They had been at about 60%. Brake pads don't wear from 60% to 15% in 2 months of normal driving. And I said, my suspicion growing. Your front suspension components, specifically the control arm bushings and ball joints, are worn beyond acceptable limits. There's excessive play in the steering system. This is a safety issue that could result in loss of vehicle control. My car's steering felt tight and responsive. No play, no wandering, no unusual tire wear that would indicate suspension problems. How much are we talking about to fix all of this? I asked, already knowing I was being fed bullshit but wanting to hear the number. For the transmission service, brake work, and suspension repairs, we're looking at $4,500. But Ms. Foster, I really want to emphasize that these are safety-critical issues. We don't recommend driving the vehicle until these repairs are completed. $4,500 for a car that had absolutely nothing wrong with it. I felt anger rising but kept my voice calm. Let me think about it and call you back. I understand this is a significant expense, Mike said, his voice taking on a practiced sympathetic tone. But we can offer financing options, and I really have to stress that driving with these conditions is putting you and your family at serious risk. These brakes could fail at any moment. I'll call you back, I repeated and hung up. I stood there in the shop bay holding my phone, covered in grease and catalytic converter residue, feeling a white-hot fury. My name is Diana Foster. I'm 38 years old, and I've been an automotive technician for 15 years. I'm an ASE-certified master automobile technician, the highest certification you can get in this industry. I hold certifications in engine repair, transmission, brakes, suspension, electrical systems, and heating and air conditioning. I own my own independent repair shop in Phoenix, Arizona, Foster's Automotive. I have 3 employees and about 40 regular customers who trust me to keep their vehicles safe and running well. I know cars. I know them intimately. I can diagnose problems by sound, by feel, by subtle changes in performance that most people would never notice. And I knew with absolute certainty that my 2022 Lexus RX, which had 32,000 miles on it and had been maintained meticulously since I bought it new, did not have a failing transmission, critically worn brakes, or suspension problems. Precision Motors was lying to me. They were trying to scam me out of $4,500 for repairs my car did not need. The thing is, this happens constantly in the automotive repair industry, especially at dealerships. Service advisors are pressured to hit sales targets. They get commissions on repair work. Some of them will flat out lie about what's wrong with your car to generate revenue. Most customers don't know enough about cars to question it. When a professional in a dealership service department tells you your brakes are dangerous or your transmission is failing, most people believe them. They authorize the work because they're scared and they don't want to put themselves or their families at risk. But I wasn't most customers. I was a master technician who could verify every single claim Precision Motors had made, and I was going to do exactly that. I finished the catalytic converter job I was working on, cleaned up, and drove to Precision Motors to pick up my car. Mike, the service advisor, was waiting for me. He was in his early 40s, wearing the standard dealership uniform, pressed shirt with the Precision Motors logo, slacks, overly friendly smile. "Ms. Foster, did you have a chance to think about the repairs we discussed?" he asked as I approached the service counter. "Yeah, I'm gonna get a second opinion," I said. His smile didn't waver, but something shifted in his eyes. "Of course, that's your right. But I do want to reiterate that these are serious safety issues. We documented everything in our inspection report." He handed me a multi-page printout with checkboxes and notes. I glanced at it, red marks next to transmission, brakes, and suspension. Notes like fluid contaminated, service required, and brake pads critically worn, immediate replacement recommended. "I'll look at it myself," I said. "Can I get my keys?" Mike hesitated. "Miss Foster, we really don't recommend driving the vehicle in its current condition. If something were to happen, I'll take that risk. Keys, please." He reluctantly handed them over, along with a liability waiver for me to sign acknowledging that I was declining recommended repairs and assuming all risk. I signed it without reading and left. I drove my car back to my shop. It drove exactly the way it had that morning. Smooth, responsive, no issues whatsoever. Back at Foster's Automotive, I pulled my Lexus into an empty bay and got to work. First, the brakes. I raised the car on the lift and removed all four wheels, inspected the brake pads visually and measured them with calipers. Front brakes pads at 58% remaining thickness, well within normal range, nowhere near critically worn. Rear brakes, pads at 62% remaining, essentially brand new. The rotors showed no scoring, no warping, no signs of excessive wear. They were in excellent condition. Precision Motors had lied completely. There was nothing wrong with my brakes. I took photographs of every brake pad with a ruler and frame, showing the measurements, documented everything. Next, the transmission. I put the car back on the ground and connected my diagnostic scanner. Ran a full transmission diagnostic. No fault codes, no performance issues. Shift timing was perfect. I checked the transmission fluid, pulled the dipstick. Fluid was clean, proper color, proper level, no contamination, no metal particles, no burning smell. I put the car on the lift again and inspected the transmission pan from underneath. No leaks, no damage. Everything looked factory fresh. Precision Motors had lied again. There was nothing wrong with my transmission. Photographs, documentation, every angle. Finally, the suspension. I inspected the control arm bushings, no cracking, no deterioration, no excessive movement. Grabbed the ball joints and tried to move them, solid, no play at all. Checked the tie rod ends, tight, properly secured. I put a pry bar against the suspension components and checked for play. Nothing. Everything was within factory specifications. The steering system had zero play. The suspension was in perfect condition. Precision Motors had lied about this too. I had now verified, using professional diagnostic tools and my 15 years of experience, that every single thing Precision Motors had claimed was wrong with my car was completely false. They had fabricated $4,500 worth of repairs for a vehicle that needed nothing but an oil change. I sat in my office and looked at the photographs and measurements I had taken. The evidence was irrefutable. Most people in my situation would probably just be relieved their car was fine, leave a bad review, and never go back to that dealership. But I was angry. Furious, actually. Because I knew I wasn't the only person Precision Motors had done this to. I knew there were people, probably lots of people, who had trusted that dealership, believed the lies, and paid thousands of dollars for repairs they didn't need. People who didn't have the knowledge to verify the claims, people who didn't own automotive repair shops with lifts and diagnostic equipment, elderly people on fixed incomes, single mothers trying to keep their families safe, young people who didn't know any better, all of them being systematically scammed by a dealership that was supposed to be trustworthy. I decided right then that I wasn't going to let this go. I was going to expose what Precision Motors was doing, and I was going to make sure they faced consequences. The next morning, I called Precision Motors and asked to speak to the service manager. A man named Greg answered. Friendly voice, professional tone. "This is Diana Foster," I said. "I came in yesterday for an oil change, and your service advisor told me I needed $4,500 in repairs. transmission service, brakes, suspension work. Yes, Miss Foster, I see your file here. Have you reconsidered the repairs? We really do recommend addressing those issues as soon as possible for your safety. I'm a master automotive technician, I said. I own an independent repair shop. I inspected my car myself last night. There is absolutely nothing wrong with my transmission, my brakes, or my suspension. Everything your service department told me was a lie. Silence on the other end of the line. Then Greg said, carefully, I'm sure there's been some kind of misunderstanding. Our technicians are highly trained and we follow very strict inspection protocols. There's no misunderstanding, I interrupted. I have photographs, I have measurements, I have diagnostic scan data. My brake pads are at 60%, not 15. My transmission fluid is clean, not contaminated. My suspension has zero play. You lied about everything. More silence. Ms. Foster, I apologize if there was any confusion. Sometimes inspection reports can be interpreted differently by different technicians. Perhaps we made an error in our assessment. An error? You told me my brakes were critically worn when they're at 60%. That's not an error. That's fraud. I really don't think we need to use that kind of language. What language should I use? You tried to charge me $4,500 for repairs my car doesn't need. You told me I was putting my family at risk by driving a car that's in perfect condition. What would you call that? Greg's tone hardened slightly. Ms. Foster, if you're dissatisfied with our service, you're certainly free to take your business elsewhere, but I would caution you about making accusations you can't substantiate. Oh, I can substantiate them. I have complete documentation. And I'm filing a complaint with the Arizona Attorney General's office and the Better Business Bureau. I'm also posting a detailed review on every platform explaining exactly what you tried to do. That's your prerogative, Greg said, his voice now cold. But I should warn you that making false or defamatory statements about a business can have legal consequences. Nothing I'm going to say is false, I said. Everything will be backed up with photographic evidence and professional measurements. Feel free to sue me. I'd love to show a judge exactly what you're doing to customers. I hung up. My hands were shaking. I had never confronted a business so directly before, but I was doing the right thing, and I knew it. Over the next few days, I filed formal complaints. First, the Arizona Attorney General's Office Consumer Protection Division. I submitted a detailed written complaint explaining what had happened, attached all my photographs showing the actual condition of my brakes, transmission, and suspension, and included Precision Motors' inspection report claiming everything was failing. The contrast was stark. Their report said my brake pads were at 15%. My photographs with measurements clearly showed 60%. Their report said my transmission fluid was contaminated. My photographs showed clean, properly colored fluid. Their report said my suspension had excessive play. My diagnostic measurements showed zero play, everything within factory specifications. I provided my ASE certification credentials to establish that I was qualified to make these assessments. Second, the Better Business Bureau. I filed a similar complaint with all the same documentation. Third, I wrote a detailed review and posted it on Google, Yelp, and Facebook. The review was long, probably longer than most people's attention span, but I wanted to be thorough. I explained exactly what had happened, included that I was a master technician, detailed every false claim Precision Motors had made, and provided the actual measurements showing my car was fine. I uploaded photographs showing my brake pads with a ruler clearly visible, showing the thickness, uploaded a photo of my clean transmission fluid next to their claim of contamination. I ended the review with, as a professional in this industry, I know that repair shops sometimes make honest mistakes in diagnosis. This was not a mistake. This was a deliberate attempt to sell me $4,500 in unnecessary repairs by lying about the condition of my vehicle and using fear tactics about my family's safety. If they tried this with me, someone who owns a repair shop and can verify their claims, imagine what they're doing to customers who don't have technical knowledge. Avoid this dealership. I posted the review on a Friday evening. By Monday morning, it had 60 comments. And that's when things got interesting. The comments weren't just people saying, thanks for the warning, or sorry this happened to you. They were other customers sharing their own experiences with Precision Motors. They told me I needed a new transmission. I got a second opinion. Transmission was fine. Paid $200 for the second opinion instead of the $3,800 they quoted. Same thing happened to my mother. They said her brakes were dangerous and she needed immediate replacement. She's elderly and was terrified. She paid $1,200. I'm a mechanic too, and I checked after her brakes were fine. I took my car there for an oil change, and they came back with a list of $2,000 in urgent repairs. I declined and took it to my regular mechanic. He said everything was fine, and they were scamming me. Story after story, person after person. A pattern. I started counting. Within 3 days, my review had over 100 comments, and at least 40 of them were people describing similar experiences. Unnecessary repairs, fear tactics, pressure to authorize expensive work, lies about safety issues, and it wasn't random. There were patterns in who was being targeted. Several elderly people reported being pressured into repairs they later found out were unnecessary. Multiple women, especially women who came in alone, described feeling like they were being taken advantage of. Young people, first-time car owners, people who admitted they didn't know much about cars. Precision Motors was systematically targeting people they perceived as vulnerable or unknowledgeable. I screenshot every comment, documented everything. And then I got a phone call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon. A woman named Susan called my shop. Is this Diana Foster, the one who posted the review about Precision Motors? Yes, that's me. My name is Susan Martinez. I'm an investigator with the Arizona Attorney General's Office Consumer Protection Division. We received your complaint and we've been monitoring the response to your review. I'd like to talk to you about what happened. My heart started racing. Of course. What do you need? Can you come to our office tomorrow? I'd like to go through your documentation in detail and discuss the other complaints we've received about Precision Motors. Other complaints. Plural. Absolutely, I said. What time? We scheduled a meeting for the next day at 10 a.m. I showed up at the AG's office with a folder full of printed documentation. Photographs, measurements, Precision Motors false inspection report, screenshots of the reviews and comments. Susan Martinez was in her mid-40s, professional, sharp-eyed. She looked at my documentation carefully. This is very thorough, she said, and your credentials as a master technician give significant weight to your assessment. Thank you. But I'm not the only one. Did you see the comments on my review? There are at least 40 people describing the same experience.
I did see them, and that's part of why I wanted to meet with you. Your complaint isn't the first we've received about Precision Motors. We've had sporadic complaints over the past 2 years, but nothing we could build a case on, usually just one person's word against the dealerships.
She pulled out a file. But your complaint is different. You have documentation. You have professional expertise that makes your assessment credible. And your review has created a critical mass of other people coming forward. Susan leaned forward. Miss Foster, I'm opening a formal investigation into Precision Motors repair practices. I'd like your permission to use your documentation as part of that investigation. Absolutely. Use whatever you need. I'm also going to be reaching out to some of the people who commented on your review to get their stories and documentation. If we can establish a pattern of fraudulent repair recommendations, we can take enforcement action. She paused. This could take several months. Investigations like this are thorough, and we need to build an airtight case. But I want you to know that we take consumer fraud very seriously, especially when it involves safety-related deception. I left the AG's office feeling something between vindication and anticipation. This was really happening. Precision Motors was going to be investigated. And I had started it. Over the next few months, I watched the story unfold. Susan contacted me periodically with updates. The investigation was expanding. They had interviewed over 40 customers who reported similar experiences with Precision Motors. The pattern was undeniable. Customers would come in for routine maintenance, oil changes, tire rotations, basic services. The dealership would claim to find extensive problems requiring thousands of dollars in repairs. When customers got second opinions, the problems often didn't exist. The AG's office sent undercover investigators to Precision Motors. They had vehicles inspected by independent mechanics beforehand to establish baseline condition, then took those same vehicles to Precision Motors for oil changes. In 3 out of 4 cases, Precision Motors recommended unnecessary repairs totaling between $2,500 and $5,000. One undercover vehicle was a nearly new Honda with 12,000 miles that had just passed a comprehensive state inspection. Precision Motors claimed it needed brake work, suspension repairs, and a transmission service. Total quote $3,800. The AG's investigators had it re-inspected by a different independent shop immediately after. The independent shop found nothing wrong. That was the evidence they needed. In September, 6 months after my initial complaint, the Arizona Attorney General announced enforcement action against Precision Motors. The dealership was charged with deceptive trade practices, consumer fraud, and violations of Arizona's automotive repair regulations. The AG's press release detailed the findings: systematic recommendations of unnecessary repairs, targeting of vulnerable customers, use of fear tactics about safety to pressure authorization of work, and failure to provide accurate diagnostic information.
The dealership was fined $250,000.
They were ordered to refund customers who had paid for unnecessary repairs. The AG's office identified 43 customers with documented cases, totaling $180,000 in refunds. Greg, the service manager I had spoken to on the phone, was fired. So were 2 service advisors, including Mike, who had called me about the fake repairs. The dealership was placed under a consent decree requiring them to implement new inspection protocols, independent oversight of repair recommendations, and mandatory disclosure of service advisor commission structures. And my review, which had started everything, now had over 500 comments. People thanking me, people sharing their own stories, people saying I had saved them from being scammed. Several people mentioned they had been about to authorize expensive repairs at Precision Motors, but had seen my review and gotten second opinions instead, saving thousands of dollars. The local news picked up the story. I was interviewed by 2 Phoenix TV stations and a newspaper reporter. They asked me why I had pursued this instead of just taking my business elsewhere. I told them because I knew if they were willing to lie to me, someone who owns a repair shop and can verify their claims, they were definitely lying to people who don't have that knowledge. This wasn't about my $4,500. It was about all the people who had already paid for repairs they didn't need, and all the people who would have been scammed in the future if someone didn't speak up. The story resonated. It was shared widely on social media. Local consumer advocacy groups cited it as an example of why people need to get second opinions on major repairs. Several other automotive repair shops, honest ones, reached out to thank me for exposing the fraud, because it hurt the reputation of the entire industry when dealerships pulled this kind of scam. For me personally, the aftermath was complicated. My business actually benefited. The publicity from the investigation and news coverage brought new customers who specifically wanted to support an honest shop owned by someone who had fought back against fraud. Several women told me they chose Foster's Automotive specifically because they felt more comfortable with a female shop owner after having bad experiences with male-dominated dealerships. My revenue increased about 30% over the following year. But there was also pushback. Other dealerships in Phoenix clearly saw me as a troublemaker. I heard through industry contacts that some of them had blacklisted me. They wouldn't sell me parts wholesale or work with me on warranty repairs. It didn't matter much. I had other suppliers, and my business didn't rely on dealership relationships. What mattered more was knowing I had made a difference. 43 people got refunds totaling $180,000. Money they had paid for repairs their cars didn't need. Money that mattered to them, that could pay rent, buy groceries, cover medical bills. Hundreds more people had been saved from future scams because they read my review and either avoided Precision Motors entirely or were more skeptical about repair recommendations. And the enforcement action sent a message to other repair shops: if you scam customers, there can be real consequences. Was it worth the risk I took? The confrontation with the dealership? The time spent documenting everything and filing complaints? Absolutely. The Precision Motors case became something of a local legend in Phoenix's automotive community. But what most people didn't know was that the story didn't end with the Attorney General's enforcement action and the $250,000 fine. There was a second chapter, one that went deeper and revealed just how systematic the fraud had been. About 2 months after the AG's announcement, I received an email from someone I didn't know. The subject line read, "I used to work at Precision Motors. You should know the truth." I opened it cautiously. Could be spam, could be someone trying to threaten me or defend the dealership, but it wasn't. The email was from a former service advisor named Travis Coleman. He had worked at Precision Motors for 3 years and had quit 2 months before my complaint sparked the investigation. His email was long and detailed. He explained that he had seen my news interview and wanted me to know how deep the problem really went. According to Travis, the fraudulent repair recommendations weren't just a few bad employees making unethical choices, it was dealership policy. Service advisors were given monthly quotas for repair revenue. If you didn't hit your quota, you faced pressure from management, written warnings, reduced hours, threats of termination. The quotas were aggressive. Each service advisor was expected to generate at least $50,000 in repair revenue per month on top of routine maintenance services. To hit those numbers, advisors were explicitly trained, to upsell customers on repairs they didn't need. Travis attached documents to his email: internal training materials, memos from management, sales scripts. One document was titled Maximizing Service Revenue Best Practices for Advisors. It included tactics like, when performing multi-point inspections, always identify at least 3 areas of concern, even if the vehicle is in good condition. Customers expect issues to be found and will be suspicious if you tell them nothing is wrong. Use safety language to create urgency. Phrases like "this could fail at any time" or "I wouldn't feel comfortable having my family in this car" are effective at overcoming customer hesitation. For customers who seem uncertain about repairs, offer financing options immediately. Many customers who can't afford repairs up front will authorize work if monthly payments seem manageable. Another document was a commission structure breakdown, showing that service advisors earned escalating commission percentages based on monthly repair sales volume. Hit 50,000, earn 4% commission. Hit 75,000, earn 6%. Hit 100,000, earn 8%. There was also an internal memo from Greg, the service manager, sent to all advisors. It read, "Team, our service revenue numbers for Q2 are below target. Corporate is expecting significant improvement in Q3, or we'll be facing staffing reductions. I need everyone focusing on upsells during every customer interaction. Remember, every car that comes in for an oil change is an opportunity to identify additional revenue. No customer should leave without being presented with at least $500 in recommended repairs. Let's hit our targets and keep this department profitable." I sat at my desk, reading these documents, feeling a cold anger settle over me. This wasn't just a few rogue employees scamming customers. This was corporate policy, systematic, incentivized, required. Service advisors were being pressured to defraud customers or lose their jobs. I forwarded everything to Susan Martinez at the Attorney General's office. She called me within an hour. "Diana, this is exactly what we suspected but couldn't prove. Can you put me in touch with this Travis Coleman? I need to interview him directly and verify these documents." I connected them. Travis agreed to cooperate fully with the investigation. He provided testimony, additional documentation, and names of other former employees who had quit because they were uncomfortable with the pressure to recommend unnecessary repairs. The AG's office reopened and expanded their investigation. What they uncovered was even worse than the initial findings. Precision Motors wasn't just one dealership. It was part of a regional chain, Southwest Auto Group, that owned 7 dealerships across Arizona and New Mexico. And the same policies that had been implemented at Precision Motors were in place at all 7 dealerships. Corporate headquarters for Southwest Auto Group had created the quota system. They had developed the training materials that taught service advisors how to manipulate customers. They had implemented the commission structure that rewarded fraud. The AG's office coordinated with New Mexico's Attorney General. They conducted a joint investigation spanning both states. Undercover operations at multiple Southwest Auto Group dealerships confirmed the pattern. Investigators brought in vehicles that had been pre-inspected and certified as being in good condition. In every case, the dealerships recommended between $2,000 and $6,000 in unnecessary repairs. One investigator brought in a 2024 Toyota Camry with 8,000 miles, practically brand new. The dealership claimed it needed brake work, a transmission flush, and suspension repairs totaling $4,200. The evidence was overwhelming. In March of 2026, the Attorneys General of Arizona and New Mexico announced a major enforcement action against Southwest Auto Group. The findings were damning. The investigation had identified over 250 customers across 7 dealerships who had been sold unnecessary repairs based on fraudulent inspections. Total fraudulent charges over $2.1 million. Southwest Auto Group was fined $1.2 million, the largest automotive consumer fraud penalty in Arizona history. They were ordered to refund all identified victims $2.1 million total. The company was placed under a consent decree requiring complete restructuring of their service department practices, elimination of repair revenue quotas for service advisors, independent third-party auditing of all repair recommendations over $1,000, mandatory video recording of vehicle inspections to prevent fabricated findings, and prohibition of commission structures tied to repair sales volume. Additionally, 3 corporate executives were personally sanctioned and barred from holding management positions at automotive dealerships in Arizona or New Mexico for 5 years. The story made national news. Consumer Reports covered it. NPR did a segment. The Today Show interviewed me via Zoom about how I had caught the fraud and what it meant for consumers. The impact rippled across the automotive industry. Other states launched their own investigations into dealership service practices. California, Texas, Florida, all of them finding similar patterns of fraudulent repair recommendations driven by aggressive sales quotas. Consumer protection groups started advocating for stronger regulations. Some states passed laws requiring dealerships to provide customers with photographic or video evidence of claimed repairs before work could be authorized. Industry associations issued new ethical guidelines trying to get ahead of regulatory crackdowns. And repair shops across the country, honest ones, reported that customers were becoming more skeptical and more likely to request second opinions before authorizing major repairs. The system was changing. Not perfectly, not completely, but changing. And it had started because I had the expertise to verify that a dealership was lying to me and the determination to do something about it. For me, the aftermath of the expanded investigation was surreal. I received hundreds of emails from people thanking me. Some from customers who had been refunded money they thought was gone forever. Others from people who had read about the case and avoided being scammed at other dealerships. One email that particularly stuck with me was from an elderly woman named Margaret. She wrote, "I'm 82 years old and live on a fixed income. 2 years ago, Precision Motors told me my car needed $3,200 in immediate repairs or it would be unsafe to drive. I was terrified. I paid using a credit card because I didn't have the money in my bank account. I've been paying it off ever since, along with the interest. Because of your complaint, the Attorney General's office contacted me, and I'm getting a full refund of $3,200. That money means I can pay off the credit card and have enough left to cover my medications for the next 6 months. You literally changed my life. Thank you." I kept that email. Read it whenever I needed a reminder of why the fight had been worth it. I also heard from other mechanics, technicians, and shop owners across the country who had their own stories of dealership fraud. One mechanic in Ohio told me about a customer who had been quoted $8,000 for engine work at a dealership. The customer got a second opinion at his shop. The engine was fine, just needed a minor sensor replacement for $200. A shop owner in Texas shared a story about a woman who had been told by a dealership that her car's entire suspension needed replacement for $6,000. He inspected it, nothing wrong. The dealership had fabricated the diagnosis. Story after story, pattern after pattern. The problem was widespread, systematic, and most victims never found out they had been scammed because they didn't have the knowledge or resources to verify the claims. I realized that my case had been unique, not because the fraud was unusual, but because I had been in a position to prove it. That realization led me to start something new. In partnership with a local consumer advocacy group, I created a program called Second Opinion Network. The concept was simple: a database of independent, certified mechanics who had agreed to provide discounted second opinion inspections for customers who had been quoted major repairs at dealerships. Customers could search the database by location, find a participating shop, bring their vehicle in for a comprehensive inspection, and get an honest assessment of whether the recommended repairs were actually necessary. Participating mechanics were vetted. They had to be ASE-certified, maintain clean business records, and agree to provide detailed written reports with photographs documenting their findings. The service cost customers $50 for a complete inspection, significantly less than the hundreds or thousands they might save by avoiding unnecessary repairs. We launched the program in Phoenix as a pilot. Within 6 months, we had 20 participating shops and had conducted over 300 second opinion inspections. The results were shocking even to me. Of the 300 inspections, 187.62% found that the dealership's repair recommendations were either completely unnecessary or significantly overstated. One customer had been quoted $7,800 for transmission replacement at a dealership. Our second opinion inspection found that the transmission was fine. There was a minor electrical issue causing a false warning light. Repair cost $350. Another customer had been told she needed $5,200 in brake and suspension work. Second opinion. Brakes were at 40% remaining, still had plenty of life, suspension was fine, no repairs needed. The program started getting media attention. Local news did features, Consumer Reports wrote about it as a model for other cities. We expanded to Tucson, then to other Arizona cities. Mechanics in other states started reaching out, asking how to implement similar programs in their areas. By the end of 2026, there were second opinion network programs in 12 states, with over 200 participating shops. We estimated that in its first year, the program had saved consumers over $2.5 million in unnecessary repairs. It wasn't a perfect solution. Dealership fraud was still happening. Customers were still being scammed. But we had created a tool that gave people a way to fight back, a way to verify claims, a way to protect themselves. And the existence of the program itself seemed to have a deterrent effect. Several dealership service managers told me off the record that they had instructed their service advisors to be more conservative with repair recommendations because customers were increasingly getting second opinions and the dealerships didn't want to be caught lying. The fear of being exposed was changing behavior. For my own business, Foster's Automotive, the impact of everything that had happened was transformative. We had grown from 3 employees to 8. We had expanded into a larger facility. Our customer base had tripled. But more importantly, the culture of the business had evolved. We weren't just fixing cars. We were building trust in an industry where trust had been systematically destroyed by businesses like Precision Motors. Every repair we recommended, we documented with photographs. Every diagnosis we made, we explained in detail and gave customers the option to verify with their own research or second opinions. We created a policy: if a customer got a second opinion that contradicted our recommendation, and that second opinion proved correct, we would refund the cost of our diagnostic fee and publicly acknowledge the error. In 3 years, we had to invoke that policy exactly twice. Both times were honest mistakes, misdiagnoses that happened because automotive repair is complex, and sometimes even experienced technicians get things wrong. But the policy mattered because it demonstrated our commitment to honesty over revenue. Customers noticed. Reviews mentioned it specifically. "This is a shop you can trust" became a recurring theme. We were thriving not despite my confrontation with Precision Motors, but because of it. The publicity had raised our profile, but more fundamentally, the entire experience had clarified what we stood for: integrity, transparency, putting customer interests ahead of profit. Those values attracted the kind of customers we wanted. People who valued honesty and were willing to pay fair prices for quality work from a business they could trust. By late 2026, I was invited to speak at industry conferences about ethics in automotive repair. I spoke at the Automotive Service Association annual conference, at NATA, the National Automotive Technicians Association, at shop owner conventions. My message was straightforward. The industry had a trust problem because too many businesses prioritized short-term revenue over long-term customer relationships. The solution wasn't complicated. Be honest, document your work, explain your recommendations, and let customers make informed decisions. Some attendees pushed back. They argued that aggressive upselling was necessary to stay competitive, that customers expected shops to find problems, that if you didn't sell repairs, someone else would. I responded, "The dealership that tried to scam me out of $4,500 is now operating under a consent decree, has paid $250,000 in fines, and has lost massive amounts of business because their reputation is destroyed. How did aggressive upselling work out for them?" That usually ended the argument. But I also met many shop owners and technicians who were grateful that someone was finally talking publicly about the industry's ethical problems. One shop owner from Michigan approached me after a presentation and said, "I've been in this business for 30 years, and I've watched it get worse and worse. Customers don't trust us anymore, and it's because of shops that pull the kind of crap Precision Motors did. Thank you for fighting back and showing that there are still honest people in this industry." Those conversations mattered to me because I knew the vast majority of automotive technicians were honest, skilled professionals who genuinely wanted to help customers keep their vehicles safe and reliable. But the industry's reputation had been poisoned by the minority who saw customers as targets to exploit. Changing that required more than just enforcement actions and fines. It required cultural shift, shops and technicians standing up and saying, "This is not acceptable, we will not tolerate it, and we will hold each other accountable." The Precision Motors case had become a catalyst for that shift. Not everywhere, not universally, but enough that I could see real change happening. As 2026 drew to a close, I reflected on everything that had happened since that phone call from Mike telling me my car needed $4,500 in fake repairs. 2 years. That's all it had been. In that time, a major dealership chain had been exposed, fined over $1 million, and forced to completely restructure their business practices. Over 250 customers had been refunded more than $2 million for unnecessary repairs. Multiple states had launched investigations into automotive service fraud and passed new consumer protection laws. The Second Opinion Network had saved consumers millions of dollars in unnecessary repairs and was expanding nationally. My business had tripled in size and become known as one of the most trusted repair shops in Phoenix. And I had gone from being an independent shop owner just trying to run an honest business to being a national advocate for automotive consumer protection. All because I had the expertise to know I was being lied to and the determination to prove it. I thought sometimes about what would have happened if I hadn't been a master technician, if I had been just a regular customer without the knowledge to verify Precision Motors' claims. I probably would have authorized the $4,500 in repairs. Would have believed them when they told me my brakes were dangerous and my transmission was failing. Would have paid for work my car didn't need, just like Margaret and the other 249 victims who had been scammed before the investigation shut it down. The difference between me and them wasn't that I was smarter or more careful, it was that I had specialized knowledge they didn't have. And that knowledge had given me power, the power to verify claims, to document fraud, to fight back effectively. That realization drove everything I did going forward. Because if expertise was the difference between being scammed and being protected, then part of my responsibility was to share that expertise. That's why I started doing free educational workshops for customers, how to avoid automotive repair scams, understanding your car's maintenance needs, what to ask when getting repair quotes. The workshops were held monthly at Foster's Automotive. We would get 30 or 40 people showing up, a mix of elderly folks, young people buying their first cars, single parents trying to manage family transportation on tight budgets. I would teach them basic things, how to check brake pad thickness visually, what clean versus contaminated fluids look like, how to verify that recommended repairs match symptoms they were actually experiencing. I gave them tools to protect themselves, not full automotive repair training that takes years, but enough knowledge to ask intelligent questions and spot obvious lies. One woman who attended a workshop told me afterward, "I've been terrified of mechanics my whole life because I don't understand cars and I always worry I'm being taken advantage of. This is the first time anyone has treated me like I'm capable of learning instead of just a wallet to exploit." So that comment stuck with me because that's what the fraudulent dealerships relied on, keeping customers ignorant and fearful so they would accept whatever they were told without questioning it. Education was empowerment, and empowerment was protection. The workshops became popular enough that other shops started doing similar programs. The Second Opinion Network encouraged all participating shops to offer consumer education as part of their commitment to transparency. It was creating a virtuous cycle. Educated customers demanded honesty. Honest shops thrived. Dishonest shops either reformed or lost business. The market was slowly correcting itself. Not fast enough, not completely, but it was moving in the right direction. And I had played a role in pushing it that way. As I looked ahead to 2027, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, optimism about the automotive repair industry. The Precision Motors case had shown that fighting back against fraud was possible, that one person with expertise and determination could spark change that affected thousands of people, that documentation and transparency could defeat corporate lies, that consumers had more power than they realized if they were willing to use it. And that sometimes the most important thing you can do is refuse to be silent when you know something is wrong. The spring of 2027 brought an unexpected development that showed just how far the ripple effects of the Precision Motors case had spread. I received an invitation to testify before a congressional subcommittee. The House Committee on Energy and Commerce was holding hearings on consumer protection in the automotive service industry. They were examining whether federal regulations were needed to prevent the kind of systematic fraud that had been uncovered in Arizona and other states. I flew to Washington, D.C. in April and found myself sitting at a witness table in a congressional hearing room facing a panel of representatives and a room full of journalists, industry lobbyists, and consumer advocates. The committee chair, Representative Sarah Chen from California, asked me to explain what had happened and why it mattered. I told the story. The fake $4,500 repair quote. My inspection that proved everything was fine. The investigation that uncovered systematic fraud. The 250 victims. The $2.1 million in fraudulent charges. Then Representative Chen asked, Ms. Foster, in your professional opinion, how common is this kind of fraud in the automotive service industry? I took a breath and answered honestly. I think it's more common than anyone wants to admit. The Precision Motors case got attention because we had documentation and because the Attorney General pursued it aggressively. But I hear from mechanics and customers across the country regularly, and the stories are remarkably similar. Dealerships and repair shops recommending unnecessary work, using fear tactics about safety, taking advantage of customers who don't have technical knowledge. I don't think it's the majority of businesses. Most shops are honest. But it's common enough that it's become normalized. Customers expect to be lied to. They expect repair shops to try to upsell them. That's a cultural problem that indicates systematic issues in how the industry operates. Another representative asked, what would it take to fix this problem? Transparency, I said. Customers need to be able to verify claims. That means requiring photographic or video documentation of recommended repairs before work is authorized. It means eliminating commission structures that incentivize service advisors to sell unnecessary work. It means mandatory second opinion rights for repairs over certain dollar amounts. And it means real enforcement, significant penalties for businesses caught defrauding customers, not just slaps on the wrist. I testified for nearly an hour, answered questions about the investigation, the Second Opinion Network, what I had learned about how dealerships operated. When I finished, several representatives thanked me for my advocacy. Representative Chen said, your willingness to fight back when you could have just walked away probably saved hundreds of people from being scammed. That's the kind of citizenship we need more of. I left Washington not knowing if anything would actually change at the federal level. Congressional hearings often led nowhere. But 3 months later, the Federal Trade Commission announced new enforcement priorities targeting automotive service fraud. They allocated additional resources to investigating deceptive repair practices and promised aggressive action against businesses engaging in systematic consumer fraud. It wasn't comprehensive federal regulation, but it was movement in the right direction. And it had happened in part because of the case I had started by refusing to accept a lie about my brakes. Back in Phoenix, life continued to evolve in unexpected ways. Foster's Automotive had become something more than just a repair shop. We were a hub for consumer education, advocacy, and industry reform. We hosted monthly workshops that now drew over 100 attendees. We had partnered with local community colleges to offer basic automotive literacy classes. We had created a mentorship program connecting experienced mechanics with young people interested in entering the trade, particularly young women who were still dramatically underrepresented in the industry. One of our mentees was a 22-year-old named Ashley Martinez. She had come to one of our workshops after being quoted $3,000 for repairs at a dealership. I had inspected her car. It needed about $400 of actual work. Ashley had been furious and wanted to learn enough about cars to never be scammed again. She started attending every workshop we offered, asked smart questions, showed genuine aptitude for understanding mechanical systems. I hired her as an apprentice technician. 18 months later, she earned her first ASE certification. 2 years after that, she had 4 certifications and was one of our best diagnostic technicians. She told me, I got into this because I was angry about being lied to. I stayed in it because I realized I could help other people avoid what happened to me. Every time a customer, especially a woman or an elderly person, comes in scared because another shop told them something terrifying and I can show them the truth, it feels like justice. That was exactly the culture I wanted to build. Mechanics motivated not just by doing good work, but by protecting people from an industry that too often exploited them. We weren't alone in that mission. The Second Opinion Network had grown to over 400 participating shops across 23 states. We had conducted over 15,000 second opinion inspections, estimated savings to consumers, over $12 million in unnecessary repairs avoided. But the numbers only told part of the story. The real impact was in the individual cases, the people who had been saved from financial devastation or who had recovered money they thought was lost forever. I received a letter from a veteran named Robert, who had been quoted $7,200 for engine work at a dealership. He was on disability and didn't have that kind of money. He was preparing to take out a high-interest loan when he found the Second Opinion Network. A participating shop inspected his vehicle. The engine was fine. He needed a $300 sensor replacement. He wrote, "I'm a combat veteran who served 2 tours in Iraq. I thought I was tough. But sitting in that dealership being told my truck needed $7,000 in repairs I couldn't afford, I felt helpless. Your program gave me a way to fight back. I saved my truck and avoided debt that would have buried me. Thank you." Stories like that made everything worthwhile. The publicity from the congressional testimony and the continued media coverage of automotive service fraud had another unexpected effect. It inspired other mechanics to speak up. I started hearing from technicians across the country who were documenting fraud at their own dealerships and repair shops. They would reach out asking for advice on how to report it, how to protect themselves, how to build cases like I had done. I connected them with consumer protection agencies in their states, provided guidance on documentation, helped them understand their rights. Some of these cases led to investigations and enforcement actions. A dealership in Texas was fined $150,000 after a technician documented systematic unnecessary transmission replacements. A chain of shops in Florida was shut down after mechanics reported that they were being forced to recommend fake repairs or be fired. Each case reinforced the lesson: documentation and transparency could defeat fraud. But I also heard heartbreaking stories from mechanics who tried to speak up and were retaliated against, fired, blacklisted, threatened with lawsuits. The industry still protected bad actors in too many cases. It was changing, but not fast enough. That's why the educational work mattered so much. Because even when the system failed to hold dishonest businesses accountable, informed customers could protect themselves by getting second opinions and refusing to authorize work they couldn't verify. By mid-2027, the story of Precision Motors had become a case study not just in business schools, but in automotive technology programs. Students training to become mechanics were taught about it as an example of what not to do, the ethical implications, the legal consequences, the damage to customer trust and industry reputation. I was invited to speak at several tech schools. I told students, "You're entering an industry with a trust problem. You can either be part of perpetuating that problem, or you can be part of fixing it." The mechanics who worked at Precision Motors weren't bad people. They were pressured by a bad system. Don't put yourself in a position where you have to choose between your ethics and your paycheck. Work for shops that value honesty. And if you ever see fraud happening, speak up. It's not snitching. It's protecting customers and protecting the integrity of your profession. Those presentations felt important because the next generation of mechanics would determine what the industry became. If they internalized the lessons from cases like Precision Motors, maybe the systematic fraud would become rarer. Maybe trust could be rebuilt. As 2027 progressed, I found myself reflecting on how much my life had changed since that September day in 2025 when Mike from Precision Motors called to tell me my car needed $4,500 in fake repairs. I had been a shop owner running a small business, focused on doing good work and keeping customers happy. Now I was a national advocate for automotive consumer protection, a congressional witness, a frequent speaker at industry conferences, someone who received dozens of emails every week from people asking for help or thanking me for fighting back. It was overwhelming sometimes. I hadn't set out to become a public figure or an activist. I had just been angry about being lied to, and determined enough to prove it. But the response had been so much bigger than I had anticipated. The case had resonated because it touched on something fundamental, the feeling of being powerless when someone with expertise takes advantage of you. Everyone had experienced that in some context. Being lied to by a professional who knew more than they did, having to choose between trusting an expert's recommendation or questioning it and being made to feel stupid or difficult. My story had shown that you could question, you could verify, you could fight back. And if you had expertise yourself, you had a responsibility to use it to protect people who didn't. That lesson extended beyond automotive repair. It was about power dynamics, about information asymmetry, about the responsibility that came with specialized knowledge. I thought about all the other industries where similar dynamics existed: healthcare, legal services, financial planning, home repair, any field where professionals had knowledge that customers lacked. Fraud could happen anywhere those power dynamics existed, and fighting it required the same tools: documentation, transparency, willingness to challenge authority, and using expertise to protect the vulnerable. The Precision Motors case had been about car repairs, but the principles applied universally. As I looked toward the future, I felt a sense of purpose I had never had before.
Foster's Automotive would continue to grow. The Second Opinion Network would keep expanding. I would keep speaking, keep educating, keep advocating.
But more than that, I hoped the story would inspire others in other industries to do the same thing, to use their expertise to expose fraud, to refuse to stay silent when they saw vulnerable people being exploited, to prioritize integrity over profit. Because change didn't happen through top-down regulation alone. It happened when individuals decided that the status quo was unacceptable and took action. Sometimes that action was big, exposing a multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. Sometimes it was small, teaching one person how to check their brake pads so they couldn't be lied to. But it all mattered. It all added up. The automotive industry was better in 2027 than it had been in 2025. Not perfect, not even close, but better. Customers were more informed, shops were more transparent, enforcement was stronger, the culture was shifting, and I had played a role in that shift. Not because I was special or uniquely brave, but because I had expertise that let me recognize fraud, documentation that let me prove it, and determination that wouldn't let me walk away. Those three things, expertise, documentation, determination, were available to more people than realized it. You didn't need to be a master technician to fight back against dishonesty. You just needed to pay attention, keep records, and refuse to accept lies as truth. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been lied to by someone with expertise they used to manipulate you, if you've ever felt powerless when a professional took advantage of your lack of knowledge, if you've ever wondered whether you could trust the person you were paying to help you, know this: you have more power than you think. Documentation defeats lies. Second opinions reveal fraud. Determination wins against businesses that count on you being too intimidated or too tired to fight. The dealership that tried to scam me out of $4,500 ended up paying $250,000 in fines, refunding millions to victims, and operating under federal oversight. They lost because I had the expertise to know they were lying and the determination to prove it. But you don't need to be a mechanic to protect yourself. You just need to ask questions, verify claims, and remember that professionals who are telling the truth will welcome scrutiny, while those who are lying will try to intimidate you into silence. Subscribe for daily stories where expertise defeats fraud, where documentation brings down corrupt systems, and where ordinary people armed with nothing but determination and the truth can win against businesses designed to exploit them. Stories where mechanics expose dealerships, where consumers fight back and win, and where one person's refusal to accept a lie sparks change that protects thousands. New story every day. The Quiet Reckoning.